Good morning. We are into the Canterbury Tales, delighting ourselves with the characters which Geoffrey Chaucer has made or truly presented as they made their entry into the Tabardin and as they appeared to him. We see Chaucer making an understanding of the people of his time, but that this piece of literature stands immortal in its might for the reason that the characters who are there in the 14th century are also the characters in all ages and in all realms. Yesterday, we read the character of the Samana. The Samana who would suffer for a quart of wine a man to have a concubine for 12 months. So the man who was Epicurus' own son, the the order that is given the right to serve summons to the people during the love days is shown as very corrupt. He is cheating the church and he is cheating the people. And then Chaucer doesn't limit himself to this place. He says that there is a summoner, but the summoner has not come here alone. With him there rode a gentle pardoner. So he has close associations with someone excuse me, who is once found guilty. So when the summoner is summoning them up to present themselves in the church, he also has a pardoner ready with him. And who is a pardoner? A pardoner is the person from the church, the order of the church, that is authorized to suggest ways wherewith to cleanse the soul, to cleanse oneself of the sins that one might have committed. So, the summoner has come here with the pardoner, and this pardoner comes from Ronceville, his friend and his compeer. So, this pardoner is the friend and companion, excuse me, and companion of the summoner. This pardoner from Ronceville, that straight was come from the court of Rome. So he only had equipped himself with those relics which he would entrust upon the wrongdoers. So he had come straight from Rome. Though he has come from Ronceville, but he declares to the people that his coming here has been directly from Rome, the highest seat of religion. Full loud he sung, "Come hither, love to me." And the song that he was singing was, "Come hither, come here, and love to me. Come here, love to me." So he used to tell to the people that I love you and come to me if you want Christ's love also to be extended on you. This summoner bore to him a stiff down, was nowhere a trumpet of half so great a sound. And the volume in which he sang this song gave the impact of it was sung in a way, it was sung in a volume which was twice as loud as the sound of a trumpet is. So nowhere was there a trumpet even half so loud as his voice. So he bore a stiff bow down. His throat was possessed of a stiff bass sound. This partner, now Chaucer doesn't feel like saying anything about this man. He's not talking about his work first. He's giving you an introduction of his appearance first, so that when you look at this man, you will visualize from your understanding of the people what kind of a person should he be. This partner had hair as yellow as wax. Very, very unbecomely for a man to have hair yellow in color. But smooth it hung as does a strike of flex. And he also gives you that idea of the texture of these hair. They are like flax. What is flax? It is the coarse material that is obtained from a plant growing underwater, and which makes this material coarse. You must have seen the gunny bags, the coarse bags in which things are contained for protection. So they are very rigid, they are very um, hard to touch. So his hair were like the flax. By ounces hung his locks that he had, and therewith he his shoulders overspread. And these hair were hanging lightly. He had less amount of hair on his head, and these they were hanging. He had spread all these hair all over his shoulder. That means they were long, they were yellow in color, and this man was so passionate about his looks that he had spread all the hair as a woman would all over his shoulder. But thin it lay by kalpoons on and on. Kalpoons are pins. So these hair, because they were very few, so he had tied them with pins at the ulterior end, and that made them spread like a cover from his head to the shoulders. But hood for jollity wore he none, and he thought that he looked so dynamic with his flax yellow hair that he did not wear a cap. Now it is very untowardly for a man to move out without a cap in England. But this man, because he is from the church, because he is authorized to give away the pardons, therefore he is the master in his own might, and therefore he doesn't wear a hat. For it was trussed up in his wallet. So the hat he had, of course, but that was tied somewhere near his wallet. Him thought he rode all of the new jet. And this man thought that he was from the new jet. This expression new jet means the new age. So he thought that he is very advanced, not that like the orthodox pardoners that should be wearing their hats and being very courteous and good looking and sober for the work that they were doing. But this man, no, he was not like that. He was from the new jet. Just as the monk bothered more to serve the world and not the Lord, so also this man loves to care for the world and be in the new jet. Dishevel save his cap. So he was all disheveled. He was very disorganized, very unorganized he was. Save his cap, he rode all bare. So whether Chaucer doesn't this man has come as if without clothes. Whatever he was wearing was as good as not having worn them, because he was so stuffed. He has got so many things hanging around him. The hair that he has doesn't show his collar. The cap that he had tied around his waist also doesn't give an idea of what he is actually wearing, and so he looks very disheveled. Such glaring eyes had he as an heir. So his eyes were very glaring, shining eyes he had, twinkling eyes like the eyes of a hare. means full of mischief, all the time trying to find a recluse, all the time trying to find someone to grip on. Such glaring eyes had he as an heir. A vernicle had he sewed upon his cap, and he was also wearing a vernicle. The Christ's mark he was carrying. His wallet lay before him in his lap, and the wallet, a big purse, was lying. The purse was not a small one, it was a very big one, and this big one, because it was stuffed with things, was lying in his lap. He was holding everything that he had very precious, bread full of pardons. So this purse that he had, the wallet that he had, was bread full, brimful, full up to the upper point, coming from Rome, all hot. So he said that he had come from Rome and he had brought all the wares, all the things that he had were hot. Just as you must have seen hawkers moving around and screaming. So hot cross buns, like, selling things which are very hot, very ready to be consumed. This man had a bag brimful, stuffed brimful of pardons. There were so many things which he could confer upon the people, upon the suffering people, as pardons. A voice he had as small as a goat. Now look at this character. When he screams, his voice is like the voice. When he sings the song, it is twice the sound of a trumpet. And when he speaks, his voice is as thin and shrill as that of a goat. So, the comparisons, you have to analyze this character by the similes, by the comparisons that he gives of this character. He doesn't tell you plainly. When he says that when he sings, his voice is like that of a trumpet, double the sound of a trumpet, you must know that this man has every tact to bring people even from a distance close to him. When he says that he's got the sound as thin as that of a goat, means when it was needed, he would reduce his voice to stand fit to the occasion. And then, no beard had he, nor never should have. This is very disgusting for a man, not to have beard. That is the symbol of manliness. So, Chaucer takes a straight opportunity first to speak the truth, that this man has no signs of manliness. When he says that no, never should he should have one. So there is no beard on his chin, and Chaucer is very sure that this man is never going to have a beard. And then immediately he apologizes. That is the humor. As smooth it was as it were latest shave. So he said that it was so smooth, please pardon me if you feel that he is not without a beard. I feel that he would never have it, and then immediately he says that, oh, it seems that he has just had a shave. I trow he were a gedding or a mare. So I must say that his appearance is like that of a mare, female horse. But of his craft, no. After having a full delight in the explanation of his appearance, Chaucer brings us back to the work. We would naturally ask, how then is he a pardoner? So he says, but of his craft, from Berwick unto Ware, nowhere was there such another pardoner. So he is the best of his kind. For in his mail he had a pillow buyer, which that he said was Curie Lady Vale, Our Lady Vale. So he said that this man had brought a torn pillow cover, and which he said was the veil that which Mother Mary wore. See the deceit, the evil deceit that he is putting up to cheat the people. He has a torn pillowcase, and which he says, pillow cover, which he says that is Mother Mary's veil. He said he had a goblet of the sail that Saint Peter had when that he went upon the sea, till Jesus Christ him hent. And he also had a goblet of the sail. He had a coarse piece of cloth, which he said was worked as a sail in the ship which Saint Peter used, one of the apostles of Christ. Saint Peter, who is also the keeper of the heaven. So this keeper of the heaven, when there was a big deluge and he saved the people from being drowned, the ship that he used, on that was tied the sail, a part of which this pardoner was carrying. He had a cross of latoon full of stones, and in a glass he had pig's bones. So he had a latoon as a cross made of stones. It was a very inferior quality or coarse thing that he had brought with himself, and also he had brought the bones of a pig. Why bones of the pig? You must have read in the poem of John Donne, Canonization, that the bones of these great lovers for whom love is spiritual, their bones would later be considered as a relic. I'm sorry, not in canonization, but in the relic. When he confirms that his bones would be like relic. Relic is something belonging to some saint and which we have protected and preserved over the ages so that it can work as a redeeming object. So he had brought pig's bones, not human bones, which he would say that they were the bones of some saint, but he had brought pig's bones because they are small and can be carried in the breadful, the big bag that he had kept before him. So he had also in a container, in a glass, he had pig's bones. But with these relics, when that he found a poor person dwelling upon land, upon a day he got him more money than that the person got in months too. So with these relics, the torn pillow cover, the torn coarse cloth, and the pig's bones, and the cross made up of stones, with these relics he could, whenever he was able to lay his hands upon a poor person, from him would he extract an amount which this man would earn in 2 months' time. Such a scoundrel cheat is he. And thus, with feigned flattery and japes, he made the person and the people his apes. So he used to do that feigned, F-E-I-G-N-A-D, artificial flattery. He used to flatter people and tempt them into purchasing the things that he carried with him with feigned flattery and japes. Japes are allusions. He used to tell to the people some stories, how by parting away with his valuable things, how he was able to earn pardon for the person who might have been a sinner. So he told all false tales, and he made the person and the people, not just one person. He would tempt the person to the extent that this person would bring many more others to be fooled by this, to be tricked by this pardoner. And then, as is usual with Chaucer, he uses the word but, telling all the evil things about him, telling that devilish appearance of this man, telling the the cunning cheat, the feigning and the cheating that this man is doing, Chaucer brings you back to say, but truly to tell you at last, he was in church a noble ecclesiast. So he said, but let me tell you that in church, he was supposed to be a noble ecclesiast. So he cheated the people, he cheated God, and he cheated the other people in the church. In the church, he had the prestige of being the best, a very noble ecclesiast. Well, could he read a lesson or a story, but all the best, he sung an offertory. In the church, he would read lessons and he would read stories to move people to be tempted to seek help from him in times of sufferings. But of all the songs that he sung the offertory the best. Offertory is the song that is sung during the masses, which persuade and move people to become charitable and donate at the church. So he was considered as a noble ecclesiast because with his double sound of the trumpet and the original sound of a goat, such melody he would create and with such effect that people had to part with their fortunes in the church. Therefore, he was considered a noble ecclesiast. For well he knew when that song was sung, he most preach and well affile his tongue. Now affile, again that feigning, that pretense, all the gestures to make himself acceptable. You must have seen that there are times when people do not uh, cleave their nails, they do not cut their nails, they generally file them so that they grow in a proper shape. So this man used a file to file his tongue. So much of feigning he can that he files his tongue so that the song becomes very, very moving to the people who hear that. So he knew very well, he knew the craft. When that song was sung, he most preached. While he was singing, he was also preaching to the people. So much persuasive was he with his skill of his learning, of his stories and the anecdotes that he would tell to the people, and that he did with a filed tongue. And why? To win silver, as he full well could. He could win silver. Therefore, he sung them merrily and loud. Therefore, he was in charge of singing while this pilgrimage was on, so that even when the people were on the pilgrimage, they would donate. So he is the man from church, placed right at the end of the number of the pilgrims that have entered the Tabardin, and he deserves to stand at the last. For all the wickedness, for all the conceit, for all the evil cheating instinct that he had. This is the worst scoundrel that finds place in the Canterbury Tale in the prologue, and this is what Chaucer was disgusted with. He couldn't believe a man as the pardoner, the summoner and the pardoner should be part of the church. So with this we end today's lecture. Thank you.